Hello, everybody. Richard Hart here. I hope you've noticed at provex.com, there's a cool new project. It uses zero-knowledge proofs. It does stuff blockchains can't do. It does stuff off-chain and then puts it on-chain with a token, burns a token, and all this other cool stuff. It's being given away for free to those that have sacrificed. What are they sacrificing for? Go check it out. I think that's like $8.5 million worth of sacrifices so far. Provex.info. So provex.info is where people are making a political statement by throwing their money away, 8.5 mil so far. And then provex.com is the free token that's being given away to people that are in the sacrifice set. So what to do? You can go check it out. You can see what other people are using the software for now. So if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin was a conglomeration of a bunch of free and open source software. They used a free and open source front end called Qt that only ran on Windows. It was programmed in C++. And then they used open source databases. Everything's open source, right? So we stand on the back of giants. The breakthrough with Bitcoin was handing out tokens to on-ramp people for free. So there was a time when the Bitcoin existed and didn't have a price, but people still participated in the network because they had a belief. They believed in, I don't want to say self-custody because it's inaccurate, but holding your own knowledge, your own private keys, which these days are generated by seed words. Back when Bitcoin was invented, there weren't seed words. The generating of keys deterministically from seed words wasn't adopted yet as a BIP, Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. So long story short, the breakthrough with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin was that you could prove people aren't double spending their coins by having a proof of work, which proves that the coins haven't already been spent, and then you wait so many confirmations until the economic energy of all of the blocks that are stacked up top of the one that you care about is enough for you to believe that it's not going to be rolled back. And right now, with Bitcoin over $1 trillion, it's a lot of economic energy every 10 minutes. It's pretty funny to wait 10 minutes for a block, to tell you the truth. In PulseChain, for instance, we have blocks every 10 seconds. It's a lot faster. Is it 10? Pretty sure it's 10. It depends on how quick people find. It could float a little higher, a little lower, like half a second or so. So the breakthrough in blockchains, particularly Bitcoin, was that you have proof of work, doing timestamping, proving that people aren't double spending their coins, and you on-ramp new users because they can mine their own coins for free, at least in the beginning, or they could mine coins out of thin air by enriching electric companies and mining companies, proof of waste, you could call it, later on. And it worked. You've got multiple $1 trillion of valuation. It worked. Now, what are some new crypto primitives that exist that didn't exist then? Well, zero-knowledge proofs. So, for instance, one of the biggest problems with crypto is if you want to de-risk or risk off or whatever, or get into something that's guaranteed to go to zero over time, but it does it slowly, the dollar, you need to go through a centralized exchange because there isn't any counterparty risk-free, decentralized on-chain exchanges for Bitcoin that have any volume or have any adoption. The devs actively don't want people building things on top of Bitcoin. They reduce the amount of data that you can put into the chain. And that works well for other chains like PulseChain because it makes it easier for people to launch tokens on it with like pump.tires or, use the tokens that are already there. It's a full system state fork of Ethereum. So if you got any coins on Ethereum or Ethereum itself around 2 years ago, you got free coins on PulseChain. So what am I? This is a really long story. This is how it goes when you're speaking from the heart with no script. So long story short, what was the breakthrough with Bitcoin? Giving out tokens for free to on-ramp users, solving the Byzantine generals problem with double spending so people could prove that their coins aren't being double spent. And now, what is this technology, the zero-knowledge technology that ProveX is built on? What can it do that Bitcoin can't? Well, it can solve that counterparty risk problem. It allows you to prove things that blockchains can't prove. So many years ago, I won't say many, but a few years ago, people developed technology which allowed you to issue cryptographically secure proofs from secure certificates that you see every day with email or you see every day with websites. So when you receive an email or when you go to a website, that little lock, that little SSL lock, you can do things with it that people aren't aware of. And that's really the breakthrough here. You can issue statements of proof from those certificates regarding what is in the statement. So if you go to a web page and it has an SSL certificate on it, you can prove that that server said that thing. And if you put it on the blockchain at that time, or at least no later than that time, and so you could solve a lot of other trust. So blockchains solve double spending trust and time stamping trust and when things happen trust, but they can't solve for you without this other technology that runs alongside them and makes them more powerful and can do things they can't do. So if someone, let's say you wanted to trade crypto without a disgusting middleman in the middle, say an exchange, the guys that get hacked, de-anonymize you, ruin your privacy, ruin your security, lose your coins, ask you a bunch of weird questions. It's the least enjoyable part of cryptocurrency. It doesn't need to be that way. You can trade directly with someone else. So the problem with trading with someone else is you have this issue of trust where, well, they say they sent the money. Did they send the money? They said this. They said they sent the. How can you prove they sent the money before you send your coins? Well, ProveX. ProveX allows them to sign a statement from an extension in their browser. You can do it other ways too, but this one's one way you can do it. That proves that they sent the money. And so, if two people perform a trade, and it's not just restricted to cryptocurrency exchanging, or is that even the right word? Basically, anytime someone wants to prove that they did something, as long as you trust the server that's issuing the proof. So let's say if someone said they PayPal'd you something, you could pull proof from the email they got from PayPal's email server or from PayPal's website itself. You could issue a cryptographically secure proof from either of those two things that showed that indeed this was paid. And because of the zero knowledge property, you don't have to declare any extra information. You don't have to show a screenshot, which could be faked, by the way, which is what's so interesting about this. So blockchain solve double spending, ProveX zero knowledge tech, and I'd prefer to brand it just ProveX because I'm not here to advertise zero knowledge tech. Just like Satoshi didn't advertise the database he was building on, and Satoshi didn't advertise the Qt GUI, graphical user interface software he used. He didn't advertise the cryptographic primitives that preceded his work. He wasn't out there advertising SEC P256K1 as a curve, right? He made a brand, and he promoted the brand, and the underlying tech that was underneath it, he didn't spend any time promoting that. And ProveX, I think, is kind of the same thing. The open software works. The open source software works. It's in production. People are using it today. You could go try it yourself, a version of it that doesn't have a token, doesn't have any token burning, and doesn't really have any users, barely. You can go to ZK or zkp2p.xyz. Bad brand, bad URL, but it's the same situation. It's an underlying cryptographic primitive that has some users, but is missing the parts that would make something grab, make something bite. People like tokens because it gives them something to talk about that in some cases there's an advantage for them talking about. So, for instance, would I have a YouTube channel if I didn't have any Bitcoin? Probably not, right? So when you are part of a network, when you're part of a movement, you're much more excited to talk about it if you get more vibe, more rewards, more enjoyment, more community, all the things people care about. Some people, gains, if there's a price for a thing. Bitcoin was around since before it had a price. The technology that ProveX is built on has been around, and it doesn't have a price. So it's cool. It's very cool. It's one of the few things in crypto that is new and innovative and doesn't have 1,000 competitors. With layer 2s, 1 million competitors, and the charts of all of them look like trash. With layer 1s, 1 million competitors, and the charts of the vast majority of them look like trash. It's very competitive. So, people kind of have this backwards understanding where they want to buy when the price is higher because it shows product market fit. It has the fear of missing out. And people aren't as interested to buy when the price is lower. And it's the same when you launch a new and innovative 0 to 1 instead of 1 to 2 kind of thing. It didn't exist, now it exists. This type of technology, it doesn't have, you can't point at like Ethereum and go, look, there's the competitor, and look at our addressable market, our addressable market share or whatever. I can't remember the fancy word VCs use for it, but it's like, how much market could you capture? And anyone that's experienced in VC will tell you it's a very dumb way to think about things, but that's the way a lot of people think about it. Like, how big is the thing you're attacking? Well, it's kind of better to do the thing that no one else is doing, because then you have more pricing power. So like if you go on provex.com, they're talking about a 2% buy and burn, 1% on each side. That kind of pricing power is awesome. I mean, there's very good pricing power. And in other places like Ethereum, that is now rolling out a new upgrade called Fusaka, it's going to increase the amount of data that people can store by sparsely sampling it. And you're like, well, is that going to add economic value to the chain? I mean, what's the number one market cap cryptocurrency? Well, it's Bitcoin. And do they ever increase the throughput? Almost never. Almost never. And are the fees cheap? Usually not. And is the price the highest? Yep. It's simple supply and demand. If you keep increasing the supply of block space, it literally becomes too cheap, to tell you the truth. Now, in theory, there's infinite demand for free space, but in reality, we haven't really seen the nearly free space get infinitely demanded on a lot of, ghost chains where there's nothing going on. So, I think it would be nicer for people to pay to use the Ethereum blockchain, because otherwise, how do you get the value to go from the things using the chain to the actual native token of the chain? I think people, like, I remember when ICOs used to launch on Ethereum and there'd be 1,000 Gwei to get a transaction in, and it gave people a reason to buy, So, yeah, long story short, no matter what industry you're in, you can underprice things. There is a price at which you're doing bad for yourself and the industry and the customers. You want to be able to afford R&D? It helps to have a price. You want to be able to buy ads to compete with other things? It helps to have a price, to not be free, which is why in capitalism you see almost no free, because those things die or never, you get crib death, they never make it, you name it. So, long story short, it is very fun and very nice that there is a new cryptographic primitive that doesn't have a token that I'm aware of, except for this new free one being given away, provex.com. Good domain name, good logo. And you can go use the tech. You can go to zkp2p.xyz and try it out. But that, I don't like a lot of the things that they did. I think that they could be much better. So someone should make them better. What a good idea, It's just like Satoshi saw open-end free GUI software and a open source database. And then he's like, oh, there's a proof of work thing that they use for email where they just, use CPU cycles to prove that you're not a spammer, that you're a real person. So it introduces a cost. And you're like, yeah, you can combine those things into a nice blockchain. He combined open source software, and then he had to choose like a couple parameters. He chose the 10-minute block time. He chose the 4-year halvening. I wouldn't have chosen a 4-year halvening. I would have had it reduced much more quickly. This boom, every 4 years thing, it seems stupid. It should be more incremental, in my opinion. So, long story short, I'm excited. It's another thing that's like, what do blockchains do that you care about that are important? Censorship resistance, on-chain exchange to remove counterparty risk. Mad gains is nice. You can have it. That's another thing people don't understand. If people have finite economic energy, more tokens equals lower prices across everything. It's really that simple. It's supply and demand. And the only way that you get around that is if the tokens are reflexive and are holding their liquidity in themselves. So like the majority of PulseX liquidity is in Pulse. And then the majority of Pulse's liquidity is in stables, and then maybe half in wrapped Ethereum from the Ethereum chain. So if Ethereum goes up, it floats the price of Hex, PulseChain, PulseX, because they're all tied together. If one goes up, they all go up. If one goes down, they all go down. And those ratios can shift as people add and remove liquidity and at what prices they do it and all these different things. But, long story short, it's nice to have something that doesn't have as many competitors because it's a new industry, a new paradigm. And it can't just solve proving statements about whether you sent a wire transfer this, that, or the other, or whether you have this many Twitter followers, or whether you really matched with this girl on Tinder, or there's a lot of different things that you could prove if you wanted to, and no one's monetizing that. So it's an opportunity. Now it's a battle to get people to do things new, like to show them the new way, but we've proven that this community is good at showing people new ways of doing things, which is why there's hundreds of thousands of users using new things. I made Uniswap popular. Hex was the majority of liquidity and trading on that system for a few months in the beginning. I make a lot of things popular. Not your keys, not your coins. Downloading front ends so that you can't be attacked through what they call a infrastructure attack, but really it's just you're pulling dependencies in from other places you don't control, and then when they turn their code to be evil, like there's just another NPM exploit a few days ago. The Son of Shah Halud, I believe it was called. And then before that, there was a Shah Halud infrastructure attack. But basically, if you care about secure software, you shouldn't be downloading dependencies. Dependency is just a fancy word for software you didn't build, but you need, right? Like Satoshi didn't build a database software. He pulled an off-the-shelf one. Ethereum didn't build a database software. They pulled an off-the-shelf one. And because they use multiple consensus clients, I think they've got multiple databases they use as well. So like Geth changed from LevelDB to RocksDB, and then it cut their RAM usage in half just by changing their database. It's pretty funny. People don't realize what goes into these things. They don't realize how the sausage is made. You kind of have to be pretty smart to know all the parts of the stack and know when abstractions are leaking. And it's funny, a lot of people producing secure software. So the guys at Anthropic pushed or used this fuzzing software called Slither. Actually, I'm not exactly sure if it's a fuzzing software because I haven't used it in so long. I haven't used it in like 6 years. 5 or 6 years since I've used it. But it's a security analysis software that looks for bugs in smart contracts. And so the Anthropic guys, Claude 4.5 AI came out, and then they ran a bunch of smart contracts through it, and they found 4.58 or something $1 million of exploits. And so I have this feeling that every time there's a new update with AI releases, that they're going to run all the blockchain code and see where the vulnerabilities are. And that's kind of going to be a race between the white hats and the black hats. Funny stuff. That's why it's great to work in this ecosystem or be a fan of this ecosystem, because we just do everything better. It's now, of course, we get no credit for it because everyone's a scumbag that only talks their own book. They only care about the tokens they bought. The token they bought is a world-changing thing, and anything that's a token that they didn't buy is a piece of trash scam. That's how it goes in crypto. So if you thought Apple versus Android and Ford versus Chevy were spicy, you should see coin you bought versus coin you didn't buy spiciness. It's very funny. I think my camera's heating up here. Hold on a second. Let me turn on a fan. Hopefully that makes the camera happy. Sorry if it makes a little buzz. When you're shooting in 8K, not that you'll see the 8K, but I've got it, it really heats up the camera. Yeah, it's funny if you pull back my YouTube videos from like 2017, about 8 years ago, the quality's amazing. Why? Because I do everything better. It's better mic, better camera, better lens, better everything, almost everything. So provex.com. Now, people wonder, why don't people in PulseChain and PulseX and Hex get any advantage over normal people in the ProveX sacrifice? Well, who knows? But I can make some guesses. If you were to, let's say you were to run up the price of something 1,000,000%, and then convert it into something else and be like, you know what, that something else has to also go up another 1,000,000%, can never dip, or I'm going to be mad at you. It's a pretty hard thing to handle. So what if instead, if when people sacrificed, there was less sacrificers, which means less potential sell energy, or what if it did? What if you had sacrificed before the 1,000,000%? So if you sacrificed a thing before it ran up 1,000,000%, you'd have 1,000,000% less kind of sell pressure later, so to speak. So, I mean, the theory, and it's just a theory, no one really knows these things. No one really knows where the price is going to go. No one really knows psychology. You're making a lot of guesses. The theory is if people sacrifice things at lower numbers, it's much easier for them to be happy because it's much easier for it to go up because there's less sell pressure. So like part of the reason Hex went up 1,000,000%, in my opinion, is because there was less sell pressure because people were locking it up for years. And so in other systems where people don't have a locking mechanic to reduce sell pressure, you've got finite options available to reduce sell pressure. Less people could hear about it. So for instance, maybe it wouldn't be on other sites. So I looked around on PulseChain.com, PulseX.com, Hex.com. I didn't see any mention of ProveX. Interesting. And stupid, probably. It would be cool if that was on there, in my opinion. But it probably leads to less sacrifice and probably leads to less potential sell pressure if the token ever has a price. Now, I've seen similar launch mechanics for free and open source things with Hex and PulseChain and PulseX and Inc. And they all ended up with a price. And they all did multiples. Did PulseX do a multiple? I don't think PulseX did a multiple, but PulseChain did. PulseX might have day one. I have to go look at the chart. So I think fair is fair. I think more liquid things have more value than less liquid things. And I think that if people sacrifice things for cheaper than for higher, then whoever or whatever the future market looks like, it should have less sell pressure in it because there's less economic energy to start with. I think a lot of the reasons, it's funny, if you look at the coins that have launched recently, the charts have been terrible. They go up day one, they go down, and they go death forever. And I've seen this across every celebrity coin, every politician coin. It's wild. I believe part of a price chart shape is based on the number of people that will hear about a thing compared to the number of people that heard about it day one. And so if you front load all your energy onto day one, you're going to get one of those dumb looking charts that's just big spike day one and then people, just dies forever. We've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. I prefer to have a chart that doesn't look like that. So reflexivity. PulseChain, faster, cheaper, Ethereum. Same code. Check it out. Just some changes to make it faster and make it cheaper. So it has lower inflation by 25%. It has faster block times, 10 seconds instead of 12 seconds. Hex, time locking with very low inflation. Not as low as Bitcoin's. Not as low as PulseChain's. Definitely not as low as PulseX, which only burns, can never mint. And I believe ProveX is the same. It can only burn, never mint. If you want to see a cool looking chart, I hate mentioning a website that, you don't want to show someone a website that has 1,000 million other coins on it that can scam people. You prefer people not get scammed. But if you do know where to look up the chart of, say, PulseX versus Pulse, it's an amazing looking chart in favor of PulseX. And I think the reason for that is because it has such a superior buy and burn mechanic and it can never inflate there is some inflation in Pulse to stakers. I think they get like 10% a year on average. You'd have to do, there's websites that track it, like ultrasound.money or something. I don't exactly remember it. Maybe that's Ethereum's supply tracker. Maybe PulseChain Stats has that. PulseChainStats.com. I haven't looked through a lot of these websites in a while. So long story short, I think PulseChain and Hex and PulseX are amazing. And I think all they need is some marketing. And I think having a cool new project that doesn't have as much competition as Layer 1s or DEXs can work well. Because if what you're trying to do isn't working, you have to rotate. If people were interested in what you had, they would have it already. You have to rotate your pitch. You have to try different things. So if you say this is to on-ramp new users to this thing, and then people check the chart and they don't like the chart, they're not going to like the new thing. If you say the new thing is to help all chains, amplify all chains, transcend chains, you end up with users that don't care to check other charts because it doesn't matter as much, because they're not, the reason the thing exists is on its own. What else? Yeah, some thought went into this stuff, my guess. So I think the chart of a thing that has decamillions of sacrifice is likely a lighter, easier chart to go up than a thing that has, say, a billion, just from a math perspective. What else? I got a bunch of questions from you guys. So that's just off the top of my head stuff. Paper, you see? You can print questions and you can answer them. The Richard Hout account on Twitter asked, hey guys, if I'm going to do a video, what do you want me to answer for questions? And here you go. Here are those questions. You've been tracking the Genius Act. What opportunities does its rulings open up? It lets you create a stablecoin and compete with other stablecoins. So if, for instance, you've got extra overhead or extra counterparty risk or extra smart contract risk from having to bridge, you could find a counterparty that wants to launch directly on your chain, which should reduce counterparty risk. But it's not active yet. So the legislation passed, but the things that it's not, the legislation passed, but it has a timer on it where it's not active yet. So people don't know that, and they just pretend that it exists. It doesn't really exist yet. It's on its timer to start at some point. How does having the most liquidity on PulseX versus Uniswap provide value to traders and secure PulseChain's position in the market? Well, Uniswap doesn't have a front end that runs on PulseChain. And they don't have... So basically, liquidity kind of becomes a first mover advantage. The bigger gets bigger, critical mass kind of snowball kind of thing. Because you care about order execution. So when you go to place a new trade, you want the best deal for your money. The best deal for your money is going to be where it's thickest. And then when you execute that trade into the thickest book, it remains the thickest because you just traded into it. And so your fees inflate the LP position of the liquidity providers of that thing. And so because PulseX was the largest in the beginning on PulseChain, it's likely to continue to be the largest because unless someone puts in millions and millions and millions of dollars, unless someone puts in like decamillions of dollars at risk to create a larger LP pool on a different system other than PulseX's, it's just going to continue to have better order execution because it has thicker books. And then you have to choose. So if you tie your new coins to stables and they become popular and people buy them, it nukes the prices of everything else because you have to buy stable to get into that thing. So like when Trump Coin launched and they chose to put, instead of Solana's liquidity, they used stable liquidity, it nuked the price. Why? Because people wanted the new thing, and to buy the new thing, they had to sell whatever other crypto they have for stable. Just like someone launched another L2 a couple weeks ago. And guess what? You could only participate if you showed that you had tons of stable. So people nuked the normal crypto prices to get stupid stable. So if you want crypto to do well and you don't want to be scared that any one of your things becoming popular will nuke the price of everything else, you kind of need that reflexivity where everything goes up together. And then it amplifies it so that a move up in one thing moves up everything. But it's a double-edged sword. A move down in one thing moves down everything. And so you basically, I've never seen a coin, I've never seen an L1 chain do well launching a bunch of tokens that didn't incentivize people to end up through the liquidity pairings of getting the native token. So for instance, stablecoins used to run on another protocol. I think it was Counterparty Protocol. And then they had a chain that they used. And the chain never made any money because people just paid a little bit of fees. A little bit of fees ain't going to get you nowhere. You need to be the thing that people hold. Store of value is a vastly superior game mechanic and value accrual mechanism than fees. Getting people to buy and hold your thing moves the chart more than fees. That's just how it is. You can go back and read the lore on all these concepts were first elucidated when Hex came out and went up 1,000,000% in a year and a half. Hope that answers your question. How do you hope to see WPLS used on Ethereum to come more embedded into the wider ecosystem? I'm not really a fan of counterparty risk or bridge risk. If you're on-ramping new users, you'd rather on-ramp them to PulseChain than to Ethereum. If you own more PulseChain than Ethereum, would be my guess, because your price might go up and they might enjoy more potential for appreciation. You know, Ethereum's price is now down after 5 years. That sucks a lot. And is it because Ethereum tech is bad? No, Ethereum tech's great. Well, why? It's too heavy. Market cap's too high. People aren't launching ICOs on it. Okay, so why buy the token? Bitminer, publicly traded. Tom Lee shills it on television all the time. He bought up 3% of the Ethereum supply, 2.5%, 3%. He's down. He's not up. He's down. Saylor bought who knows how many billions. Not looking that great for him either. So you'd prefer something that's a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to get to go up, you know. The S-curve thing is real. Things are unpopular. I'm going to do this backwards for you guys. Is that it? I don't know. I'll do it backwards for you. I'm going to do it from my perspective. And I'm going to do it from your perspective. So this is a normal S-curve. Early adoption, users, flat. All right, well, I called the top in Bitcoin many years ago at 65K before it dropped to 17K. And now it's at like 88K. And a few days ago, I think it was 85. It sucks. Nobody wants a 2X or a 3X. They don't. They want a 10X, 100X, 1000X. They're not. Most people aren't going to get generationally wealthy on a 2X. So I hope that answers your question. I think PulseChain's cooler than Ethereum. But if Ethereum goes to the moon, I ain't going to cry too bad either. What's the multiplier to sacrifice firstborn children? I don't think there's any points awarded for that. Why did you buy ETH at 3.7K brev? It would have been nicer to buy it at 1,400, wouldn't it, when it dipped there? Wah! Yeah, no one knows with perfection where markets are going to go. How are we going to deal with banks, governments, etc. when proceeding with ProveX? Surely they would not like the idea, especially in the EU. I think governments like honesty and proof. So if you have something that proves statements and proves honesty, that sounds like a win to me. I mean, the governments appear to hate crypto a little less than they used to. So that's nice. Needless to say, I think our ecosystem has proven very robust to government attack since we beat the government in the government's court, which almost no one else has ever done. So maybe the government's figured out that we're not to be trifled with. Who knows? What are you hoping to have as key features of the minimum viable product? Go test ZK P2P.xyz. Terrible domain name. That working with a token and some token burning would be pretty awesome. By the way, the token can launch before any mechanisms to burn it exist. So you don't have to wait years for that. Launching a token, pretty easy, pretty well understood, pretty well audited and explored space. So I read on the website that the token could be issued shortly after the sacrifice phase. Because it's a PRC20, ERC20. The code is well understood. What if the wrong political party takes office again at some point in the future? Do you think they will again use 3-letter agencies to target you and your followers? I doubt it. Didn't work out well for him last time, but who knows or cares? That's what this stuff's built for, censorship resistance, right? What else? Theoretically, the protocol we're launch would have a banking partner already. Baking partner, it says. That's funny. You don't need one. It's peer-to-peer, so the protocol doesn't touch. It's just software that peers run. It's just code. You can run it or not. It doesn't have any life of its own. It's just like the calculator program in your operating system. You can run calculator or you can not run calculator. It's a tool you can use for your own ends. Doesn't have banks. You might have a bank. That's your problem. Is it possible to fork something existing so we can research it? Told you about that already. Some of these questions are hard to understand. The theory is OTC effectively. Please correct me if my understanding is incorrect. Does it rely on community providing a side to purchase? What would theoretically happen if the community didn't have enough sell pressure at one point? I don't even get this question. It's software that you run like a calculator. Just helps you do what you want to do with your life better. If you want to trade one thing for another thing, you can prove a statement that says that you did something, like paid. You can also automate the sending of coins to where you want to send them. Why does it burn one IP, it says? You should go to the doctor, mate, or jerk off less. Why would your reason be to not let ProveX buy and burn be directed to, your guys' typing sucks, to PulseX? Why would you buy and burn the ProveX token instead of the PulseX token? The PulseX token is already rewarded by whatever liquidity. If ProveX has liquidity in PulseX, then PulseX buy and burn will be enriched by those trades. It doesn't also need to starve the native token of the new project because you hold that bag. The begging because you hold a bag thing is so gross. Hey, bro, why don't you just give new token to me, bro? Because I have this, Vitalik, why don't you just make it so that validators just give me money instead of themselves? Vitalik, why don't you just inflate supply and give to me, please? That's what your questions sound like. They suck. It's begging with more words. Satoshi, please give me keys to early blocks, please. Thank you. In poorly written, uncapitalized English. Man, I shouldn't have printed so much of this. This sucks. Been a while since I read comments, and it sucks. Please educate to me or translate that tweet for me. Oh, educate to you. Thanks, man. Best wrist. I'm going to say wristwatch because you just wrote watch. Best watch to buy with a $50,000 budget. Don't buy watches. Dumb. As a person that has bought lots of watches, I can tell you there's better things to do with your money. The only people that like watches are other guys. So if you need other guys to like you more, you can buy watches. When When you live stream, you should use a clearly obvious AI version of yourself for the first 5 to 10 minutes just to mess with everyone and play into the theories and conspiracies. All of you guys that say I'm not here can kill yourselves. Okay, take that back. Don't kill yourselves. I extremely do not like being gaslit in that I do not exist. And the things I say, I don't say. It really bothers me. If you are intent on telling me that I don't exist and that I'm actually AI, block yourself on my behalf, because I really dislike it. I do exist, and I like the things that I say. Thank you. You're really smart. Did you go to college? Also, you have a lot of common sense. What city did you grow up in? Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I went to school in Davie there. And I went to community college, and it sucked, and I quit. Thank you for the kind words. Everything you want to learn, it's on the internet now. The best way to learn stuff is to pull knowledge in as you need it, not to shove a lot of knowledge into yourself and hope you need it one day. You're just going to forget it all. It's all going to be useless. Pull in knowledge as you need it. Rebuild trust. Let's talk about rebuild trust. Go look at the charts that you guys made with your selling, okay? And then see where anything has been any different. It's the same crap, right? You need marketing. That's what you need. We miss you and love you lots. Thanks. Is the 4-year cycle come to an end? I sure hope so. I sure hope so. But even if it doesn't, you've got so many conflicting things. Everyone got, the government froze. That's not a word, froze. The government froze, and then people didn't get paid, and then they had to sell what they had to survive, and a lot of people work for the government, and the prices of stuff people bought crashed, and the markets for stuff got frozen, and they just now today decided to turn off quantitative tightening, so I hear, at the Fed of the United States. And so a lot of those things, and, you know, Mr. Bitminer, Tom Lee, hasn't gotten his 5% of Ethereum he wants to buy yet. He's only about halfway done. He's got $850 million sitting in cash, so I hear, currently. So you've got a lot of things that are positive. And then you've got a lot of things that are negative. You've got like S-curve crap and some DAT sold instead of bought. These digital asset treasuries, DAT plays. And it's hard to call it, you know, and you always have 40% dips. And so, you know, Ethereum not too long ago was 1,500. Okay, well now it's 2,800. Well, I like 2,800 better than 1,500. So even if it's like flippity-floppity, it's still making much higher lows. If you look at the chart, it's still up and to the right. So I think that, so what, either it keeps dumping and you get your 4-year crap cycle, and then it's over after 364 days if it makes the fractal of the last 2 times it did it, or you don't get it this time because the only people that are in it are institutional money and they own all the coins and retail's not really here, which is why there's no search volume. In which case, maybe you don't do the 4-year dippity-do, whatnot. So it's hard to predict. I hope that people rotate out of Bitcoin into Ethereum and into PulseChain, ProveX, you name it, PulseX, Hex, Pulse. I'd like to see those things happen. But in the end, you do the best you can. You do what you know works, and then if it works, wonderful. And if it doesn't, you gave it your best. A lot of people say they've tried everything, and they haven't tried anything, you know? So I'm happy to see things happening. Like the charity in the United States is sitting on, I don't know, soon to be 1 million tablets that they're going to figure out how to distribute. As soon as they figure out a way that works better than the way they tried previously, you know, they sent 100K out to random people. It didn't work. Well, that's expensive. You'd rather do it a way that works. So you rotate, you try things differently. You just keep trying. And then at some point, you're what's left. And everyone else has fallen by the wayside and disappeared and aren't talked about and aren't doing live streams and aren't releasing new technology and aren't doing new and awesome things with no competitors. You know, we're doing it better. It just takes a little time. By the way, Bitcoin doesn't have an on-chain exchange and hasn't for 15 years. PulseChain does, right? So like the stuff we have is better than what Bitcoin has. If you keep doing the right thing, it should become more valuable than it in a world where the better stuff gets rewarded. And in a world where it doesn't get rewarded, you should still be a lot higher than you are now, in my opinion. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't, predict prices. I don't make forward-looking statements very much, particularly on things that I've founded. Basically never. Like I don't make forward-looking statements just because the stuff's good enough on its own. You don't have to like make unqualified guesses that no one can know the answer to. I know that if you have better tech and you do marketing and there's more potential, that's about all you can ask for. And we do have better tech and we do have more potential. And where's Satoshi's video? He's not doing one. I'm doing one. So, man, it takes a lot of time to read your guys' questions. My God. All right. So, long story short, provex.com, provex.info, Hex, PulseChain, PulseX. You just more things keep integrating in the stack. You've got on-chain exchange. You've got time-locked value storage. You've got consensus network that's higher throughput, lower fees. Now you're going to have new technology nobody else has. Nobody else is tokenized. Nobody else has that much pricing power. Cool stuff, right? And then eventually you run out of things to build, and you just have more than enough, and you're just waiting for the tinder to hit. When I say tinder, I don't mean the website. I mean the kindling, the stuff that creates a fire. If you have all that infrastructure, if you have all the greatness, if you've had a bunch of weekends get shaken out, if it's the bottom, if everything's nuked, right, I think it amplifies potential. So I really think that this ecosystem just needs a little marketing. That's it. It's better than so many other things. Really, really, really good stuff. Yeah. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'm sweating. My camera's sweating. And I hope to talk to you soon. I'm excited. I think that I feel good knowing that I am doing the best that I can do. And I think if you do the best that you can do for long enough, the world will yield to you. The world is bendable to your wishes if you try hard enough. It's one of the cool things about the time that we're in, Anyway, see you guys. Talk to you soon.